explain what's happening when you just phase out of
Exactly.
existence in the middle of the conversation. Hi everyone, welcome to OSA Backstage. I'm Dani Meyer, this is Sauce, and on today's episode, Serena and I are talking to Maestro José Luis Gomez. He is our conductor for our upcoming Masterworks featuring Estevez's Afternoon on the Plains, the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto with Paul Huang, and Sibelius' Symphony No. 1. Symphony fans will remember Jose Luis from his Omaha Symphony debut on a 24-hour notice Bruckner 4. Oh, that was so much fun, and it's been even more fun getting to know him with way more advanced notice this time. Really thrilled to have him back. Conversation was great. He's an incredible violinist. I suggest going to the YouTubes and looking because you'll find some really extraordinary Bach. And his path to becoming a conductor is essentially someone handing a baton and saying, well, what do you think? And it's really cool to discover what happens when you say why not instead of why. There's a bit at the end where we said goodbye and then we actually didn't end up stop talking, so I kept a little bit of that in. It was great to catch up with him, and you'll get a glimpse of that. But in any case, this was a delight. We're so glad you're here. Enjoy. Maestro, thank you so much for doing
Uh,
this.
sure, absolutely. Looking forward.
What should we call you?
Jose Luis is fine.
Great. Well, Jose Luis, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Jose Luis Gomez. Right now, currently I'm the music director of the Tucson Symphony Orchestra in Arizona, and I will be very soon a guest conductor of the Omaha Symphony Orchestra during the 25-26 season.
We are very excited. It's going to be a great program. It's lovely to have you back. Symphony fans will recognize you from your 24-hour notice Bruckner 4 debut. How does it feel to come back to Omaha with more than a day notice?
It feels great, but it also felt great to be able to jump in such a short notice with a great program too. So this time, of course, we have built the program together. So this gives an extra level of excitement and also preparation. So I think it's all great. You know, it was sometimes it's great to meet the right people. You know, in the most strange circumstances. So I think that's how I felt. You know, it's like, oh, this is a fantastic orchestra. It's great to have met this orchestra this way. So I look forward to my return. I'm very humbled and glad that we're doing this together.
Amazing. Would you say that part of your career is meeting the right people in strange circumstances? Because you were a professional violinist until suddenly you weren't.
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. Yeah, probably. I think it's part of my DNA to let life show me what is next, right? Of course, I'm very conscious about what I want and what I look forward, you know, in everything I do. And as you mentioned, you know, I was a violinist. I mean, I want to consider myself still a violinist, although it's a different setup because I'm conducting all the time. Um, but I was a violinist that always look at the orchestra, mm, especially the orchestra, because I played in orchestra for many years, as a very interesting part of my life. And so the switch into conducting, although was a little bit, you know, something that I was not exposed to much before, um, felt natural. So I think the strangest circumstances probably are very natural for me. For what some people would be like a very kind of contrasting, you know, change. For me, it felt like it was a natural transition. So, but I will agree with you. It might be just the way I am. I like to take things as they come, learn from them, and also try to, you know, put all my passion and love and dedication and discipline to the next thing I do.
So recognizing when something is an opportunity. Um, do you remember your first orchestra concert? Did you hear violin first or orchestra first?
So I do remember my first ever rehearsal actually with
Okay.
an orchestra, and it was me and my brother and I. We were in the youth orchestra of my city, of my region in Maracaibo, Venezuela, of part of El Sistema, and it was at that time. I remember we had our high school. Well, not high school because I was what 7 years old, so it was still what elementary school,
Yeah.
and we call it primaria. And I remember we had so the mornings with that, and we had a little, physical education like football. We played football, soccer, and then conservatory the whole afternoon. And the youth orchestra started the rehearsals at 6:30, 7 p.m. So it was a 2-hour rehearsal, and that Tuesday evening, my brother and I were ready to, jump into this incredible first ever rehearsal, and the electricity went off in the rehearsal room. And I will never forget that I mean, my brother and I and all the kids, we were just we waited until the end of rehearsal just to wait for the electricity to come back. He never came back. My
Oh.
dad picks us up because my dad is a professional flutist, and he was also, the teacher of the woodwinds. And at that time they didn't have rehearsal because it was a full orchestra rehearsal. And he picked us up after the rehearsal and he said, "What's wrong?" And I was crying. My brother, we were like desperate. We were like, why we didn't rehearse? We wanted to rehearse. We were ready for it. I think my dad laughed, like thinking like, okay, it's not gonna be the last rehearsal you're gonna have, so don't worry, he'll rehearse again. And so,
My
but
God.
I remember clearly that first, excitement of getting in an orchestra rehearsal.
What did your brother play, or what does your brother play?
Violin. He's a professional violinist. He's a section violin player of the Tenerife Symphony Orchestra in Spain.
Okay, so you're just two little boys holding your violin cases, waiting desperately, but you were just because your dad was a professional flute player and a teacher. Is your brother older than you?
He's 11 months older only. So we're almost, you call them Irish twins, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that means you maybe heard a little bit of violin before you started playing in the house. Is that true, or
Oh,
did you both start at the same time?
we started at the same time. My brother started when he was 5. I started when I was 4. And I'm gonna be very blunt honest because I hated the violin. I thought this was uncomfortable. My brother was like, he was made for it. I was like, I don't want to play this. And I was the younger, so I had more freedom to say what I thought. Being the
Mhm.
youngest sibling, I said, I don't want to play this. And so they didn't argue with me. They just say, okay, fine. We'll let you think. I said I want to be a pianist. I want to play the cello because it's more comfortable, probably. But they didn't put any other instrument. I just kept doing, my conservatory. We had something at that time called musical kinder. So it was like
Yeah.
I was doing solfege, and of course, with my dad knowing music, I knew how to solfege already at that age. So I kept doing my things, and and the year after seeing my brother, playing the violin, I thought, okay, maybe I should give it a try. So at 5, I officially came back to it, and I never stopped since.
Oh my gosh, at 5 you came back to it, and then at 8, 7 or 8, you cried because your first orchestra rehearsal was canceled because the electricity went out.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then just a few years later, this is the thing I don't understand. So you were part of El Sistema.
Mhm.
Do they make it a point of asking their concertmasters to conduct, or was this just something your conductor said, "Why don't you give this a shot?"
It was actually, I was asked to do it.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that, so that's 8 years old, first rehearsal. Then we did more rehearsals and we
Yeah.
started, playing and this and that. And, in El Sistema, would you do auditions, to move into different places? So I wanted to be the concertmaster in my regional orchestra. So at 11, I just went for the audition. I won the audition. And this is no joke. I mean, programs where Shostakovich 5, Scheherazade, Capricho Español, all of the things, Russian Easter, festival, which I love because it had that solo. So I was like, yeah, I mean, this is it. My feet didn't touch the ground. I remember it was,
Mhm, mhm.
but in one of the programs, I remember I think we were doing some traditional Venezuelan music or something like that, and the conductor said to me, "It'll be great, because you're playing this." I was playing some solo piece, And he said, so standing up, and then he said, it would be great if you conduct the overture before. And I was like, why? I just, I'm gonna be. I said, nah, no, you should conduct it. And my dad said, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I was mortified. So my dad just said, no, we'll practice. So we got to stand, give me a baton. I was like, "What is this?" So I did it, and I have the pictures. It's so funny because I was like, okay, I got into it, but my only goal was just to then stand with the violin. So you see the pictures of me doing the thing. I'm this short little, 11-year-old guy, and then with the violin, I was like, okay, this is okay. The reason why I'm conducting is because I want to play as a soloist.
But I'm
Well, I
just
was
still
asked. I
amazed.
was asked. Yeah.
I'm still amazed. Okay, we had this so we had Alistair Neil with us last season, and he was saying but he was 16, but it was very similar. It's just the director just looked at him and said, Alistair, would you like to come up and conduct? And I'm wondering if anyone ever explained to you why they asked, or if they just looked at you, your legs not even brushing the floor, sawing away at Shostakovich 5 as an 11-year-old. Like, oh, this one might enjoy waving a baton. Or did they give you any sort of reason? You went,
I
oh,
I guess probably I like the leading part of anything when it
mm,
came to music, and I like the somehow also I like the responsibility, and
yeah.
as an anecdotal thing, you are the youth orchestra, but you still need to make decisions. You still are the concertmaster, and I loved it. I loved being asked for bowings. I loved even so my brother was sitting in the section. He will be in the second stand sometimes, and he will give me a hard time, and I will be like, sure, I mean, that's up. I said, yeah, but you sat down. I said, well, now it's up. So I love the idea of also feeling the pressure. So I think the conducting was like, okay, yeah, sure. Now, of course, there's many layers of it. And I think I also remember the feeling of hearing the orchestra in front of you. And I also felt the difference between making the sound and being with the sound, being part of the sound making. So that was also a very nice memory that I now even get even more clearer, after so many years.
How different is it? Even just those few feet.
It's very different because there is something about when you're playing an instrument, because you're a wonderful bass player, you are actually producing the sound together with a section, right? So your instrument sound blends immediately, or should blend immediately, with the people around you, the people behind you, the people in front of you. The conducting, and that's where the technique comes in place, have to be exactly the same, but also embracing that sound and making it work together. So they say sometimes, oh, the conductor is just too ahead, or the conductor is too behind. Those are technical, probably deficiencies, because the music making, the gesture has to be exactly what the music happens. That's why later on in my career, one of the biggest fortunes I had was learning the actual, in very more specific things about technical conducting with Paavo Järvi, the music director of the Frankfurt Radio at that time when I won the competition, the Scholte competition in Frankfurt. And it was the most important. He said the most important thing for a conductor is the upbeat, because that's how you set the tempo, but also the character of the music. And you have to be clear, confident, and know what you're doing with your gesture of your upbeat. And that is like when you play the instrument, you need to know how to make your sound. And I think, although they're not related specifically, it does complement each other. The conductor being more part of the sound, as a conveyor of the sound, the player being the creator of the sound physically.
That's fantastic. Going back to the Schulte competition and Pavo, um, what happened between you went to Spain, you played as a concertmaster there, but you were taking conducting lessons and you were clearly doing more of it if you decided to do the Schulte competition. So at what point did you meet Maestro Jarvi, and at what point did you kind of decide you were going to go for it?
It was interesting because it was a colleague of mine of the orchestra who said, that he knew that I had, this interest in conducting. And he said, I think, there's something, you should do it. I said, well, I said, oh, I'm always interested. I kept, through my career as a violinist, always being curious about conducting and scores and more of that. And so I just looked at the calendar and I saw the shorty competition 6 months away. And I thought, of course, you need to send a video preparation. So my colleagues, helped me, put together the things that I think it was necessary for me, especially specifically as learning with some of the guest conductors and the music director at the time in my orchestra in Tenerife in Spain, to do, Histoire du Soldat, maybe a Mozart symphony, other, chamber, stuff like, Elgar Serenade or something, and put it together on a video with concerts. We played maybe a couple of concerts and then send it to show. They say, okay, 6 months ahead, they invited me for their, I was selected. And so I said, okay, now I have a deadline. So now I'm going to work with everything. So whatever I was working maybe a couple of months before, then it became, a challenge just to do it seriously. And I spoke with many conductors. I mean, my music director at the time, a Chinese conductor called Liu Jia, and then John Nelson was a guest conductor. I spoke with him. Vasily Petrenko, I spoke with him, and I showed them. I had like individual lessons with them, and I remembered. I said, well, the competition is happening in a few months. And I said, okay, and comments such as, I mean, Petrenko told me, I think you should do this and just believe in it. It's not a hobby, he said. You're a good violinist. This is not just a side thing. I said, of course not. And I said, take it as a matter of life and death, as blunt as that. And I said, I like that because that's how you take everything for yourself. It's not saying, oh well, I'm gonna try. No, just do it. Of course, I didn't feel the pressure, so I get to that competition, and I did, with my best, representation of the things that I could do, and I think I had a good natural technique, but also the things that I learned made me be as clear as I needed to be. But then Pavos was shown the video of my eliminatory. So let's say they had 3 rounds. So the first round and second round, it was with the Frankfurt Radio Symphony Orchestra, where he was the music director, and the manager of the orchestra, Andrea Sichman, who is now the manager of the Berlin Philharmonic. She approached me when I got to the finals. And in the finals, it was with the Opera Orchestra of Frankfurt. We had to rehearse. And before that first rehearsal that I had with them, after I passed the first and second round, she said, the Frankfurt Radio selected you as their preferred conductor of the 2 rounds. And I said, wow, this is very humbling. Wow, fantastic. And he said, and I've shown the video to Pavo Yarvi, and we're looking for some time, to have a like a assistant, an assistant conductor, but he wants more of a mentorship conductor. He doesn't want, something that is, bureaucratic. He wants, because he was in America, with the Cincinnati Symphony, and he thought that he wanted more of a mentorship, also assistant conductor. And so we would like to make that happen. What do you think? And I said, do I need to win the competition? I said, oh no, forget about that. I mean, we just make it work. I mean, you just do your final. Of course, she was in the jury. Probably she knew that I was going to win. I don't know. I was just more excited that before even doing the final round, I was like, okay, I have the chance to work with an amazing orchestra, with an amazing conductor. I don't want to win this. I don't need
You've
to
already
win this
won.
competition. Yeah, exactly. I already felt like I won something. So then, of course, I won the competition. That was exciting. But the most exciting thing is, like, a week after, I was invited to Frankfurt, and then meet Tavo, and we started talking, and it was great. It was great because it was a reunion. Also, I met him as a younger player when I was in the Gustav Mahler Youth Orchestra, and he, although he was not conducting that orchestra in that tour, we were playing with Ivan Fischer. He was conducting the European Youth Orchestra, but we were 2 orchestras in the same place in Italy for coincidence on the tour. And I remember we went out and I met him. I was playing with some other, very dear friend of mine, some jazz music. And he was like, so we remember each other. He said, I remember you, the long hair and this and that. So he said, it's great to see you now. And I said, I can teach you how to conduct. And I said, okay, that's what I need.
That's Serena just worked with the RVs. Was it last summer, Serena?
Yes, I was in Pernu for the RV
For the
festivals.
festival. Oh,
Yes,
fantastic.
so I completely understand. It was a whole throughout the entire week, every time, Auftakt, Auftakt, which is upbeat in German,
Yeah.
just constantly. Everyone, you know, we wouldn't even start. We'd go and the orchestra would be ready to play, and then he said, "Nope, wrong. Try again."
Hmm. That's that's them, and I think that's one of the great things because you get the actual information you need. Of course, music making and everything, but there are so many technical things that sometimes you just need the raw words. And Auftrag is one of those raw words that you will never forget because it's always in the back of your mind every time you conduct something.
Yeah.
So okay, so but when I think of an upbeat, usually the first example that comes to mind is something extremely very vibrant, just very like has lots of raw energy in it, right? But
Hmm.
let's pivoting for a hot second. The piece are opening this program with in October, the Estevez, is very poignant and very thoughtful and very calm. So how do you convey what are the things that you worked with on the opposite end of the spectrum to convey that in that first upbeat for the orchestra?
Well, it's the same thing because the upbeat can show all of the information that you need. And in a slower piece, probably is the most difficult because the same speed that you are doing that off tag and the character you're giving it has to resemble, everything that is happening. And in the stereo piece, actually there's no downbeat. So the upbeat help exactly to make that second beat together. Bong. So it's just a harp and the basses and and the woodwinds coming together. So actually, that's the use of the outbeat. And how do you make it happen? By imagining exactly what you want the sound to look like, and your body, your gesture has to transmit exactly that, tempo wise, character wise, dynamic wise. Because that's part of the upbeat as well. It's not only the character, it's like an instrument, the dynamic and the character and the speed. Everything is in that gesture as well. So then there are all the things happening in the rest of that particular piece, which we called it somehow the afternoon of a faun, through the eyes of a Venezuelan composer, because it's the same atmosphere. And of course, and there are all the things that are happening in between that you need to emphasize: dynamics, textures, colors of the sounds, and so forth.
Would you say that when you look at scores for, let's say, the first time, are you thinking of it now from the conductor's perspective or from a violin's perspective? Do you ever lose that violinist perspective?
Yes, definitely. The spectrum of the visual spectrum of the score and the musical spectrum that the score is giving you, it's way more global than when you look at the violin part, or a single instrument part. I must say that just because I'm a little bit weird, when I had my positions, leading orchestras, or even, I remember I led, the second violin section for 4 years or something like that, and which I loved even more because I was the inner voices. I always would look at the score, myself before getting to the first rehearsal or while I'm learning, the piece. And there's funny because there's something funny because I remember Sibelius' First Symphony that I'm sure you want to talk later. But I remember I played that symphony with a conductor. I don't remember his name. No, I do remember Yaron Traub. He's a Israeli conductor, and I had the score, and I went to talk to him and said, how do you navigate this here and there? And because I was fascinated looking at my score and seeing that I knew what was going on as a violinist, but I wanted more information, a little bit of, if what I was doing was right. And I was surprised that more or less the system that he had was what I was going that direction. And he helped me a lot to encourage myself. Okay, so that's how you do it. Okay.
When you say you have a system, so, and Serena, you've talked about this too. It's just the way you mark a score. Serena also made fun of me for this once because I'm looking, I forget what we were looking at. Maybe it's Elgar. I was like, how in the hell do you make sense of this? And she's like, it's just like a bass part, Danny. It's like, does this look hard? Great, practice it.
I think, sometimes when everybody has their own, on their own way to look at it. Mine, it's, especially when you get a new piece, you look at it as a roadmap first without much emotion into it. Of course, many pieces, and it happened maybe also to Serena, is many pieces maybe you have played before, you know them already, but you take the score and I take all the emotion, all the musical emotion into it, and I just look at it as plain as it is, as a map. Now, I know how everything already is happening musically, but I like to still look at the phrases. I mark my phrases, 4-bar phrases, 8-bar phrases. I have a little bit of a thing with, numbers in even numbers. So when I see uneven numbers, it's more exciting. With oh, look at that! So that's 5 and C values. There is not much of sometimes evenness in certain things. So, but I still mark them, not because I look at them, but there's something while I go through the score that makes me, look at it as a road map. And then you look at your, what instruments are keeping, certain melodies, or what are the inner voices that lead into something else. And after that, every time I go back to it, or when I look at it, then it seems a little bit magical, because it seems like everything comes to life um, very easy in your head, even without listening to a recording. That's why I like commissions, because I don't like any information other than the score. And when a score is well written, like Sibelius, Mozart, all of these things, when a new score is written so well, you don't need anything. Everything is so clear. The tempo marking can help you to understand. But even the way it's written, if it's written well, it's incredible how, to the eyes of a conductor, then it makes sense.
I have a question also about your process. You have such a strong base on solfege as well. Do you find that you use that more often when you're looking at scores? Do you play through other lines on your instrument? I know there's such a variety of how, or on the piano, I don't know your piano skills, people have such different ways, but how do you kind of, have it in your head?
I force my brain to imagine every single sound. I I I believe that probably you can reduce things. I mean, of course, you can reduce everything to a piano, and that's wonderful. It's actually a very, it's a skill. Um, but I just listen. I try to listen to every single thing, globally and individually, in my head. Depends on how comfortable you are with perfect pitch. Because of my father, my brother and I, we have perfect pitch, so that's a little bit of a curse. So we just look at the notes and we hear them already. I mean, I know that a C is a C, and a B is a B, and all of that in terms of the harmony and the intonation of it. But it's, at least in my experience, it just happens in my head easier sometimes than even when I listen to a recording, because when I listen, I'm behind. So when I listen to a score, and you know how damaging can be that for a conductor. When I listen to a recording, I'm already, I already know the score. I already, because, well, in the case of Sibelius, I've done it before, but I just look at it already as it is in my head. And without the recording or without anything, you have to hear the same sounds, but now with your own approach to it. And I think, at least for me, it works, because then when I work in the orchestra, you you already are trying to hear those sounds the way they're produced in your head. Now, there is also a danger there, and that's where the conducting complexity comes. It's not only what you want. Sometimes take from the orchestra what they give you, and that's where you have to, empower, the great musical ideas that an orchestra can give you, because that's also part of the job of a conductor. It's conveying your vision, but also, orchestras, and the Omaha Symphony has, a great deal of experience and wonderful musicians. Let them give you something. Don't You're not there to necessarily teach anything, but just to make work. Probably that great idea that you didn't think before, that you're like, oh, look at that, little, retardando with the oboe, that you waited a little bit. That's something wonderful also that we learn as conductors throughout our careers.
How often does your roadmap change?
Almost never. Only when I conduct opera, because you plan everything and then something else can happen. But something else can happen because, you're dealing with a bigger machine, that many things are on site, so you have to help everything work. But most of the time, everything should not change. So you should have very clear and confidently, not with arrogance, but with confidence that this is how you want this piece of music to sound like. And any ensemble in front of you, opera or symphonic ensemble, when they see that confidence and that kind of preparation, they'll embrace it and they will jump with you. And your job is just to make them theirs too. So it's like saying, hey, I want this to be the thing that we want to do. And so most of the time I would say it shouldn't change. But
So it's more, is this more that the roadmap is the framework from which everything individual it can happen within?
exactly. And I think in a very objective way, without getting into the real thing that we do, which is make music, which we're humans and we're interacting with each other, the roadmap has to stay the same because you have to have clear how the musical arch is going to happen. Now, it can happen differently in certain ways, but if the general view stays the same, it means that you prepared well for that work.
How do you rectify that with having a soloist like the Tchaikovsky violin concerto that we're doing with Paul Wong? How do you meet in the middle? Is this the same as like I'm bringing my roadmap? He's obviously going to bring his roadmap, and then when we
Sure.
meet for the first time, we'll figure it out together.
And you have to give the orchestra its roadmap too, because you guys have played that Tchaikovsky concerto millions of
Mhm.
times. So I think it comes beautifully, especially when it comes to accompanying, the ability of immediately adapt or immediately show a different pathway. And of course, soloist and conductor, they get together just before, and they talk about things, and maybe the soloist express certain things that the soloist would like to do a little bit different from what the last time you did it. As I come also from the opera world, I'm very open to last minute changes even, or spontaneous things. And that's probably my job, try to be the link between the big body of the concerto, which is the orchestra, and the other part of it, which is the soloist. I'm just trying to help navigate the two ideas, and sometimes my own personal inputs come out as well. I remember doing this concerto a couple of seasons ago with Hilary Hahn, and she has a very nice approach in certain things that some people they don't do. Like she's very literal in certain stuff, and we talked about it before, and she knew it, I knew it, and it took only being at the right moment, both of us, for the orchestra to get it immediately, and they embraced it. That okay, oh yeah, that makes sense. Although we have done it always different, oh, boom, it's so. I think it's the unspoken communication on stage. Obviously, it's good to speak before.
With opera, how do you handle that? How do you handle that kind of surprise, just out of curiosity? Or has there been a moment where something has just gone completely awry?
Well, the opera is in a nutshell. It happens. We have a lot of rehearsals before we even rehearse with the orchestra. So the singers and the conductor and a pianist with the staging, you mount the stage and you start. Have some musical rehearsals that is called like only to talk about music, but throughout the staging process, you repeat the music, and the singers get used to the way we decided to do these things. So by the time you get to the orchestra, all of that is translated now to, not a piano companies, but an orchestra. And your job is to make that same thing to reflect with the orchestra, because the piano is a different, body than a big orchestra. How do you navigate the things that happen? Well, you have to be incredibly attentive and supportive. And when I say attentive, it's because you need to know that probably in a performance, there are so many things that can happen staging wise that can affect the singer. Something that, it didn't reach certain point in the stage that the singer needed to reach, or even something happened with a clothing, whatever, something that a costume thing that can affect the concentration of the singer. So you have to be attentive to all of those things. And then also you have to be able to support. So if the singer or maybe is feeling a little bit something and the air is just not the fiato is not the same. So just if we agree to do this slow, and because the fiato when it's nice, he or she can hold it. Maybe this time you feel already that it's not happening. So you rush it a little bit, you help, you support. So it's a little bit of intuition, it's a little bit of that's where the technique comes in hand, because you need to move things fast, maybe, or slow things because something is different. So you have to have the reaction of the orchestra in your hand very quickly. So the answer is it's just attentive and supportive at the same time.
I have a sort of, I guess like a two-part question, but you talked a lot about being that bridge between, the artist or the orchestra's musical ideas and your musical, your roadmap. How much does, does the composer's intentions, like what you see, what you really kind of believe coming from the composer's intentions factor into how you relate to the orchestra? Like, do you ever feel like an orchestra might bring something that you feel is completely against what you believe the composer's intentions are? And I guess the second part of that is, in this program, you're doing a Venezuelan piece, you're also doing a Finnish piece. How does that, you obviously have a personal background to one, really having grown up, really understanding that musical style. And then how do you kind of approach a musical style that is maybe less familiar or maybe is just as familiar because you grew up with it since you were 4 or 5 years old? Thoughts on that?
Sure. Definitely, starting from the composer perspective, that has to be the leading aspect of any of our work. And so using the word roadmap is related to the composer's intention. You try to be as fair, at least in my personal experience, and also working with Pavo, is like you have to, the composer leads, and composers like Beethoven, I think they give you exactly the information that you need. Now, if I make an example with Beethoven and orchestras, the approach that I think Beethoven had in his works, you have to be a little bit, permissive of the historic part of it and how the music was played at that time, and try to, in modern times, try to apply it to the orchestra. That obviously, in certain places that they don't have that kind of tradition, it can be a little bit of a yin and yang, or how to say, a little bit of a negotiating thing. Now, if they trust you as the person that wants to do that in that particular way, many orchestras will understand it and maybe adapt it, because some orchestras probably say, well, we always play Beethoven 5 and this is too fast, or this is not, this is pa 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 pa, or something like that, when it's just nothing like that is written. It's an opera, pa 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 pa. It's exactly like that. It's just it's as clear as the music is written on the paper. Now, you have to be confident of your idea. That's what I feel. In that case, I respect, but also I want us to, try something different. So you have to be confident of that thing. Now, I'm Latin American. I was born in Venezuela, but I grew up with music mostly also European too. So when it comes to dealing with the duality of Esteves and Sibelius, it's interesting because in this program, what I really wanted to make a point is like, yes, you have a composer called Antonio Esteves, but you're not gonna get any Latin flavors out of it. You're gonna be surprised how the imagination, actually in a very common Western language that touches a little bit of the impressionistic colors, all of a sudden has also a taste of Latin America. And I tell you what is the only thing, at least for me, that in that piece makes the moment to people who think like, oh wow, what is that? The whole piece, the whole beginning, you're like, oh, this sounds exactly as, a Debussy or a Dutilleux. There is something, impressionistic about it. But there is a moment in which there is a wheel coming in, and you're like, oh, this is definitely something, a sound that it was never, part of this atmosphere. Now, the wheel was used also by Stravinsky in Sacre du Printemps, and he's not Latin American. But the way that Esteves used it there, because of the whole atmosphere of noon in the plain, so mediodía en el llano, that's what it means, that title. And the plain in Venezuela is a very, unique, nature situation, because it's just, it's these incredible long horizons, and you hear a lot of sounds, especially in different parts of the day. It's just the animals, it's just the air, it's many things that are happening. And I think he describes them in this impressionistic way. And then he adds that widow as a very unique element of that part of the world. Now, Sibelius doesn't have that, but Sibelius is all about folklorism. And although the first symphony is the one that is a little bit more into that kind of romantic, Slavic, although he's not, but they'd say, oh, he sounds like a Tchaikovsky, or he was. I
It's
don't
Brahms
agree.
five.
Exactly. But still there are something when it comes to the character of Finnish folk music that comes alive with Sibelius. Maybe is not only that rhapsodic first theme, but maybe is the fast tempo, yum pum pum pada bum pum. There's something there that it sounds dance like with a character from that part of the world. So that's why I like these two composers trying to be as Western as they can, but they are still their own. And I thought that was a little bit of a play game, for the audience.
It's great, and it's a beautiful piece of music, and I keep like, one of your things, it seems to be commissions. You mentioned that earlier. You really like commissioning new works, and then also introducing audiences to music from South America, and I keep thinking it's just an exposure thing. We know what we grew up with. And so when we see names that we're not familiar with, like, our first inclination is like, I don't know about that. But the reality is it probably does not sound very different at all to what we're used to. It's just the name that's unfamiliar. What's been your experience in introducing new composers to people, whether it's hundreds of years old or was written yesterday?
I like shock therapy somehow, but in a gentle way. Meaning, you create the trust,
Mhm.
but also you present things with honesty and with sincerity, but without sugarcoating it. Oh well, we're gonna play this because please. No, just listen to it. It's great, and even if you don't like it, say it. Just because that's part of the experience. It's good for people to have the ability to listen to music without any prejudice. And prejudice, sometimes they say, well, should I say that I didn't like it? Well, yes. And should I say that I didn't like this piece by Mozart? Okay, it's fine. Now you need to think more why you didn't like it. Was it the interpretation? Was it just because you don't like that word? Or there's so many layers of it. And was it because you haven't listened to it enough? Maybe that's also because we have learned, us as musicians, that sometimes the first approaches are great and you're like, wow, I love it. But you play it again, oh, I love it less. But then you play it again, oh yeah, now I think I understand it. Or sometimes you say, oh, I hate it, and you play it and play it, and like, well, I think probably I didn't listen to it enough. So I think it's important to be honest what you present. And with new music, it's important to do it with respect. And that includes also rehearsing it with time, give the composer the chance also to express any changes that they need. And also you need to show the trust to the composer. So I think when we take commissions, it has to be with the confidence, and also bringing that confidence to composer, not saying, well, we commissioned this, and you're like, oh, well, this piece is not good anyway. So why are you doing it? So you have to own it, and you have to help the composer also be part of that ownership, and present. Once that happens, I think it's a combination for success.
What makes you gravitate towards a composer, specifically like a contemporary one?
Mm, Well, what makes me is honestly is how the score looks like. For me, I remember when we did this piece by Raven Chacon recently. It was a great commission. It's a very atmospheric piece. So Raven is a Native American composer, Pulitzer Prize winner, and MacArthur, Grant
He
winner as
he
well.
did a residency here. He did a
Oh,
residency here in Omaha at the Bemis. Yeah, he's amazing.
wonderful. Well, he's amazing. I mean, when I talked to him even before he was doing the composition that we were part of with the Dallas Symphony and the ACO, I was amazed about his thought process. He doesn't speak that much. He's low speaking, but there was something about it that I was like, interesting. This is a man of very few words. And when the word he presented, which was called in Inscription, it was really unique that he's using very little, musical information, meaning that it felt static, but is that what we are trying to do? And when he was just listening to it, and he was like, well, yeah, maybe here a little bit slower or this faster. No, I think I like this. And then there was this tile, thing that he wanted to change, from the first idea. I like hearing the composer experiment with whatever they are. And in his case, it was so obvious also in his personality. So I bring, I love being a channel for the composer in some ways, and trying to help, envision those ideas to an orchestra or to an ensemble of any kind. And I think this is an incredible responsibility. I feel even more joy when that happens, because you know that you're trying to give life to something that I arrived at the end of it, and it's very touching for me.
And we also know that pieces like Beethoven 5 are going to live well beyond us. And here's something that you can't guarantee. You can't guarantee more than what you're doing currently on that stage at that time. So you have to make the most of it. That's
Yep.
tremendous. So you don't really have a style or a genre of composer. It's more just one-on-one working with individual people and seeing how they think and how they put music to paper.
Yes, I would say it's a one-on-one. I don't seclude myself or reclude myself from any opportunities of seeing different styles when it comes to, I have accompanied works that are very Latin driven by Roberto Sierra or Arturo Marquez, but I also have worked into things that are incredibly abstract and incredibly on the other spectrum of what you would think, music can be. I would say yes. I'll take it one by one, and I even, you know as an example, is a great exercise with what I do in my current orchestra in Tucson with the Young Composers Project that we have. That even when a 11-year-old kid comes with an idea that it sounds very simple, but it's beautiful to make it sound like, and then you have another 8-year-old kid that comes with the most abstract, whatever, and you're like, wow. I mean, it's great. So
Well, you were once that 8-year-old, and you were once that 11-year-old, and someone put you as concertmaster for Shostakovich 5. So clearly, giving the
oh
youth
yeah.
an opportunity is right there. Um, you travel. So right now you're in Puerto Rico, and you travel so extensively. I looked through your calendar, and between the United States, Canada, Spain, South America, Europe, New Zealand, you're everywhere. How do you handle a culture difference, or you've been doing this for so long? Is it just natural to kind of step off the plane into the hall and go?
Great question. There's no method. You just do it. It doesn't get easier with age, that's for sure. It doesn't get easier with anything about traveling, like saying, oh well, you travel more comfortable, less comfortable. It doesn't matter. The only thing that I would say, if you just mentalize yourself that you're going from point A to point B, just think about arriving to point B, and that's it. And what happens in between, just deal with it, and with calm, and it's fine. It'll be okay. It's like when I was coming here to Puerto Rico, that I had a travel change with my flight. I did opening night in Tucson, and then the second performance on Sunday. I needed to travel on Monday. My flights were so delayed, and so finally the best solution was to change the route. Completely, like change airlines, everything. I said, okay, fine, okay, I'm gonna get on a plane to Atlanta that is leaving in 5 minutes from now. Can you make that change? It's like, okay, boom, jump in the plane, stop in Atlanta. Oh, the flight to Puerto Rico is also delayed. I say, okay, fine. I'm gonna get there at 11. I got earlier than my initial plan. It was like 11 p.m. I said, okay, rehearsal is at 9. No problem. Just deal with it. Deal with it. Get there. And Nielsen's Second Symphony was the first thing in the morning. So I was like, yeah, that's what matters.
That's the caffeine. That's your shot.
Yeah.
That's your shot in the morning of Nielsen 2 waiting for you. Oh my God. Do you have a plane routine?
Yes, I do. It's called sleeping as much as you can. It's just disconnecting the brain, boom, and sometimes includes a little bit of drooling, which is not the most elegant thing to say, but hey, that's when life is great, simply because you're completely relaxed. I love sleeping in planes. This is an incredible, beautiful sport that I like to practice as much as possible.
Amazing. I just have one more question for you. So Serena, do you have any okay, we ask everybody this. If you had 30 minutes on stage, no consequences, you could play or do anything you wanted to do and you would not get in trouble. What are you trying?
30 minutes?
Yeah,
That's a lot of time.
you could do some significant damage to an instrument in 30
Okay,
minutes.
the piece that I would love to do, it's Adams or 30. That would be the greatest thing. Trying to sit still or stand still and making everybody stand still. That's how I will use my 30 minutes. You still have a lot of minutes left, but that would be worth it.
You could do the extended version. So you're still on the podium. You're just doing John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. That's what
I
you're
don't
doing.
know. I don't know if that's
We've
something we
had
want to see.
we've had laptop, we've had multiple cellos, we've had bassoon, and now we have 4 minutes and 33 seconds of
Of nothing. Of
I'll take
nothing,
it.
or a lot. This is the thing, that when you take everything, that's the whole, right? You're thinking that no, it's incredibly powerful. Right? I just love that concept.
It's great. I can't argue with it. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. We're looking forward to working with you so much later this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you, Serena, and I can wait. I can wait. Looking forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose Luis. Talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye.
4 minutes and 33 seconds. Everyone has an answer where it's like, I just
Ah,
never.
listen, that's great because you just put me on the spot. I was just thinking. It took me 1 second to think. Yeah, I mean, yeah. What is a big thing? Is a big thing. Is it the biggest thing that I ever, or is that something like? No, maybe it's just nothing. What if it's nothing? And it just my thought process of that happened in like 3 seconds. I went from big to
Yes. We actually had, intermission this past weekend. We had not intermission, between the overture and the concerto, we had to move the piano out. And it was the quietest hall both nights because we didn't have anybody speaking. It was just watching the piano move. And it's like that's the same kind of exercise where you're just spending 10 minutes pretending that you're not daydreaming or like trying to be on point and holding, like, should I hold position, should I not hold position, like, don't relax, don't look relaxed, don't talk to somebody, and the audience doesn't know what to do either because if they make noise you can hear it everywhere in the hall and it's
it's true.
yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So forcing them to do it on purpose would be really something.
Yeah, that's an experience. I think it's genius. I think when it happens to that. I don't know if it has happened to you in the orchestra, but it's like so you have the break master or whatever that is coming, to announce, the rehearsal is going to start. But if I normally just wait until the very end to come on stage, but sometimes I come a little bit earlier, so I just stand behind the podium or something. So I put my arms on top of a rail or something. And if it's maybe the last 40 seconds, maybe some people they're still playing, but then somebody stops playing and everybody stops playing, and then awkward silence, and the guy is just waiting on the watch for the, and I'm like, okay,
Yep.
you can still play a little bit.
Yep.
It's fine. But everybody just stops and waits.
It's great. It makes you feel fantastic. We even for concerts that happens, the audience is just like, oh, is this the time? And the audience goes completely silent. And Susanna and I, our concertmaster, usually make eye contact and we both just kind of and start playing something something else, just like, no, not yet.
Not yet, not yet.